Hello, Bloodstream. It is your new best friend, James Maple, here with a very exciting guest for you. We have advocate, author, ambassador, amazing pageant expert, Miss Dima Hendricks. Welcome to the show today, Dima.
Well, good. Well, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Wonderful. Before we jump into the interview, just tell us a quick rundown of who you are, what you do for work, and your connection to the bleeding disorders community.
So I'm Dima Hendricks. I'm a sickle cell warrior and a sickle cell health coach. I've been working with psychologists from University of Pittsburgh on the charisma study. And you guys probably interviewed him before, Dr. Jonasant. And I'm now the program coordinator for the study. So I'm actually helping sickle cell warriors through health coaching. That's what I'm currently doing now. But I do, as you said before in my intro, I do a lot of other things. And I'm also the founder of the Through the Pain 501c3.
Amazing. I think this is a perfect opportunity for us to kind of jump in and talk about things. So I want to get a sense of what life is like for you. I mean, I have a good sense as a Black American myself, but specifically as a Black American, as a Black woman, what does Black history mean to you as a Black woman within the context of the bleeding disorder space? I'm always curious to know that.
So within the space, what it means to me, I think of first and foremost Henrietta Lacks. She gave her Black girl magic to help cure cancer. And, it wasn't, of course, not by her permission or her family's permission, but people looking into her life and looking into her DNA is what sparked a lot of what's going on in the medical space right now. So I think historically we've always been, before we have actually been, tested and guinea pigs. But now I feel that work has allowed us to come into this space where we're not curing just people who are of color, but the world. So I just think that we have a lot of Black girl magic, Black boy magic.
Yes.
Happening in the Black history space.
So Dima, one question I love posing to my guests is talking about the obstacles that you've run into as a Black woman. As you're an advocate, but you also are a patient yourself. What are some obstacles that you've run into as a Black woman navigating the bleeding disorder space?
So as a Black woman, we're known as the strongest. We're always strong. We're the pillars of our family. And with that, quite often, we're not believed. And we're not believed not by our own people, our spouses, or our family members, because we are always so strong. And also, we're not believed in the medical space. And there's also some times where there's a lot of medical gaslighting that happens. And so I run into that all the time. Like, oh, you look fly. You bring your Black girl magic. So there's nothing wrong with you, or you look put together. And then there's the, like, are you really in pain, or are you really that sick? And so I, as a Black woman, I come across that all the time.
So I guess the follow-up question to that would be, I mean, you seem to be a successful Black woman and seem to be, you're well put together. You know how to navigate this space. So for someone listening who's experienced something similar to you, what ways did you kind of crawl yourself or navigate yourself around those obstacles, or the organizations, community members that you turn to help you navigate that?
One, we have to be our own advocates. And using your own voice is very instrumental. And being educated in your illness is a must. So we can be able to talk to the doctors and know their lingo. As far as community organizations, there's the Sickle Cell Community Consortium that educates all of the partners in the community. Dr. Lakia Bailey, she is the founder and the president. And we've learned so much from her and know how to take care of ourselves. And she's actually put a lot of initiatives together within that, within the consortium. Other organizations, the American Red Cross recently partnered with the sickle cell community and having blood drives for sickle cell warriors. So there's so many different community organizations that are able to help us right now in this space. And then there's nonprofits like mine, the Through the Pain.
I'm glad you said that, because it leads perfectly to my next question. I want to stay on this topic of advocacy. Now, looking back on your career, what moment are you most proud of in the advocacy work that you've done?
So I'm not really proud. I'm cool with the accolades or whatever. It's okay. I think I'm proud each time when someone says to me, especially a warrior, says, I see you. You're doing it. You're helping me to stay strong. I put out a Facebook or Instagram story, and I was like, why am I doing this? This is trash, complete trash. And someone reached back out to me and said that this really helped me. So just hearing that feedback that makes me proud.
To someone who is brand new to the sickle cell space, what do you think, like, the first pillar of knowledge they should know about sickle cell?
It hurts a lot. It really is painful. And as something that I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy, and that there's a lot to learn, because sickle cell doesn't just affect the body, it affects the social economical status, it affects relationships, it affects everything, every part and every nuance of life. Sickle cell takes over. So I think that's important to know when stepping into this space.
Going along with stepping into the space, I'm always curious too to know, what advice would you give, along the lines of my previous question, like a parent who has a child that has sickle cell. This hypothetical parent we're talking about have theoretically lived decades with no knowledge of sickle cell. It didn't affect them. What advice would you give to a parent who has recently had a child with sickle cell? I mean, I imagine this is a life-altering, life-changing thing, new element to their life. I know it can't be easy. So to any parents out there listening, what bit of advice do you have for them?
So that's not a hypothetical question, because I actually know a parent who did not know anything about sickle cell. In fact, she's on my board of directors for Through the Pain now. And she thought it was a death sentence. And now, we had a conversation yesterday, which was so crazy. When she sees me and she talks to me, she understands and she sees that, wow, my son can have a beautiful, full life with sickle cell disease and make impact in the space. So one, sickle cell is not necessarily a death sentence. Two, there's more research out there, and there's more medicine and things are being done now to make life with sickle cell better. And three, make sure you're surrounded by people who love you and that will support you and your child.
That's excellent advice, for sure. Yeah. So, do you ever run across this within the bleeding disorder space? I work for Bloodstream Podcast, so I've been here for about a year. So my knowledge of hemophilia was really first and foremost because Patrick has hemophilia himself. Yeah. I'm curious to know, though, do you feel that sickle cell has proper representation within the bleeding disorder space at large? And if not, what are ways that we can bring more awareness to sickle cell?
So I think we're doing it now, having the conversation of bringing awareness. And to answer your initial question, no, there's not a lot of representation. There's not a lot of spaces to talk about sickle cell, period. But now things are changing for the good. Things are changing for the better. And now we finally have a sickle cell textbook. Like, bruh, when that was released, it was amazing. Now we actually can we have the knowledge at our fingertips. So utilizing the tools that we are getting now is the best bet. And I think we just need to have more conversations like these. And I do want to add that there's not a lot of support within our own community. And, sickle cell is known as the Black disease. And there's people with sickle cell who are not Black. Mm-hmm. So, or don't identify as Black. And because of this, we don't have a lot of newborn. There's not a lot of newborn screening. There's not a lot of testing. People are walking around with the trait and not even knowing that they're carriers. So I would implore everyone to we need to educate. We need to have the kitchen table talk at home. And you know what I mean when I say that. Us, as a Black community, need to have the kitchen table talk and say, look, this is what happens. And this is why it's important. And I think when we tell our own people, then as a collective, we can work better together.
Along the lines of working better together, I'm curious to know about your specific advocacy goals in 2023. In researching you, I know you do a lot of different things that not even just in sickle cell, but you speak to so many different people. I'm curious to know, do you have any goals for advocacy across the board that you've set for yourself to achieve in 2023?
So I want to kind of establish my nonprofit Through the Pain a little bit more. And I have a podcast called Through the Pain. And this year, I want to focus on the podcast, the relationship dynamic, and have a segment called Loving Through the Pain. And so I have my husband, who's my husband, but he's a caregiver. It's really important. The dynamic of the caregiver and spouse relationship is really nuanced, and it's really difficult, and it can be very demanding on a relationship. So we're going to get into that. So that's one of my goals. My second goal is to raise more awareness about the importance of blood donations. And so we're having several blood drives within the community soon. So those are my main two goals.
Incredible. My last question for you before we let you go, Dima, and I'm always curious about this for all of my guests. What do you want your legacy to be? When you are long gone and people remember Dima Hendricks, what do you want them to remember about you, Dima?
Wow. That is a loaded question. I want my legacy to be an extension, and I apologize for those who are not people of faith. I just have to preface this. But I'm a woman of faith, and I just want my legacy to be an extension of what God's grace and what God's plan is, and what God has and what He is. I just want to be an extension of that. I just want to make sure that, I am living His purpose.
Well, you are certainly doing it and making amazing strides along the way. Everyone, please, I implore you, go follow Through the Pain podcast. I'm assuming available wherever you listen to podcasts, right, Dima?
Yes, wherever you listen to.
Excellent. And I will do a live pitch. I would love to be a guest on the show, on your show, Dima. I'm going to make that request live on air right now. And with that said, Dima Hendricks, thank you so much for taking the time. We look forward to hearing from you again.